All right. I had to try and do this twice. Because the last times I did this was yesterday. I went down this meandering path where I was so intrigued by these last two scenes in the prologue of Reapers Gale. And I would go down this rabbit hole of what if this and what if that, and this lone rider, which I'm dying to know if we know who this is. This guy with like a red crimson scales mask or something like that. Just dying to know who this guy is. And I'm pretty sure he might have Kachain Chamal companions, which that would be awesome. But at first, I thought, okay, this guy seems a little bit Karsa-ish, but he doesn't seem like a Karsa type. But, I mean, he wants vengeance like Karsa. And it talked about his two companions, and I thought, well, he has these two doghead companions. I mean, not really companions, but maybe he has two living hounds of shadow. But then it says that he has these talons, or not him, but his companions have these talons and things. And I thought, oh, dang, he might have some Kachain Chamal. So I'm dying to know if this is somebody that we know of, but it sounds like more likely it's somebody completely new, but it's very interesting. And one thing that I think really makes this prologue S tier for me is consider the two sides that we have. We have the side with Kilmandaros and Gothos and Mael and Animander Rake, and consider the situation that they had there. They were in a situation where everything was just converging upon this curled Emerlon, just to go in there and take their piece of things. And it's like this big power vacuum. And I don't exactly know for sure what happened in that prologue to make that happen, although it seems like the Four Colossal are a part of that. But it just seems to be happening very quickly, and people are swarming in for their little piece. And also, I did mention in the last video how quickly that power vacuum can happen. Also, something that needs to be considered is how quickly people can rally behind somebody, and it can change the world. Think of Cyrus the Great, people rallying behind him, and Alexander the Great, people like Julius Caesar, Napoleon. Sometimes just we think, well, it's gradual. These massive this growth of kingdoms. Sometimes it can happen within lifespans. Anyway, just thought I'd throw that out there because it seems like we're going to get some more and more of that sort of thing. But consider the prologue, how we have this thing that was happening, and as it's like a cautionary tale. We see Kilmandaros, this defender of it, and Animander Rake is going to go in as a defender as well, but at what cost? It's almost like this proactive. It feels a little bit Minority Report-ish, where they're going to go in and just destroy people who would even consider or even have the power to make a claim. Remember, we have these crucified dragons and things. Did Animander Rake do that? I think we figured out who did that before, but I just forget the details. But we have We had the start of Memories of Ice with Pran Chol chasing down this mother, Jagat, and her kids, just because they had the potential of what they could become. And I also think of, I think of in Memories of Ice as well, this moment where Animander Rake is destroying these witches and is almost doing that as a way of sparing Whiskey Jack from having that on his shoulders, but at the same time, Whiskey Jack is not wanting to have that on Animander Rake, kind of this dual thing. And it's like they're shield anviling each other, which is just, they've become friends at that point. And we see a very light Animander Rake at that moment compared to the one that we get in this prologue. It sounds like he's going in, he's sealing the door behind him, and it's like you think of Anakin destroying the Jedi children in whichever one that was in the prequels. And it's very, very, very interesting to see these same things play out. And there's just so many themes that just leap off the page. So many real world themes. I think of the plight of the Native American, and just the idea that sometimes in our own history, there's just been these migrations. I think of my obsession with the Bronze Age and how much we just don't really know about what happened with that. I think of the writings of the Egyptians, of the sea peoples that showed up and just ravaged the whole Eastern Mediterranean. We don't know where they went necessarily, if they went and settled and that's who was there, but we don't really know where they came from and where they went. At least I don't. And all the situations revolving that all the factors, I guess I should say. Sounds like it was a big systems collapse of a lot of things. But there's probably famine, and there was probably economy collapse and things like that. But these sea peoples came in, and again, we see that happening, a type of thing happening in these first two, or the scene 4 and 5, where we had what happened. Kilmandaros is this defender, and now it's almost like we get this new defender, maybe with this red masked crimson guy, whatever, with these two Kachain Shamal, who seems like he's not a friend of the Lethery, but I don't really know who he is. Anyway, without going back into the scenes too in depth, because I did that a couple times, and I don't think I need to, especially if you've read it. I'm a little bit confused about the timeline this is happening, because this fourth one is in the last days of King Discanar, which makes you think of the end of Midnight Tides. And we have the Prida, the Lethery Prida going out, and we already have mentions of wind and, gale. We're getting ready to get mentions of wind. But it's almost like the wind has struck her back as she gets off her horse, I believe, and leaves to look over this ridge or something. This gale almost knocks her back, this cold, cold gale. And Reapers usually use sickles, and it's saying that it hit her in the chest like a hammer. Anyway, very cool. And she sees where off the coast here at one point, I believe the Mecro City about 80 years before had been kind of trapped there in the ice. And then she sees these war canoes. And at first you think of the canoes that were buried under Capistan, who had those bones. of the Barghast original Rivi spirits, or whatever that ended up being. I get so confused from book to book. Even though I'm so on with the journey, I forget things. But it seems like maybe these are the Barghast that happen right near the end of Midnight Tides, but that doesn't really make sense to me in some ways, because if this is happening before Gardens of the Moon, the reason I think that is because of the drowned Edur that we find later on in Midnight, or in Memories of Ice, right near the end of the king's life. And because of that, I think, okay, well, wherever the Barghast in that book went in Memories of Ice, I don't know if they would have made it here yet. But maybe. It seems like it could be. And another reason I think that is because the fronts of the boats, or maybe the sides of the boats, I can't remember, they have been dismantled a little bit, and I think that's where they get those perfect weapons, or whatever they had, with that perfect craftsmanship that has been lost. So I think maybe Barghast people have shown up, and it's freaking out. It's freaking out this Prida, who wonders who the heck is among us right now. And yeah, it's just very, very, very cool. And it's like these canoes. I say canoes, but about 100 people could fit on one of these canoes, and it sounds like they're just stacked up on the beach, just left there. This is a migration, not a warring army. It sounds like they probably brought everyone in this migration. And I wonder, is Heaton here? Is Kruppa here still with Heaton, or however that went? Anyway, let me see. I don't want to get to everything here, but another thing that is very interesting is she wants to hold back and see what kind of report is going to be sent back to the king, if they're going to report this thing. And if they don't report that, then maybe someone who is working with these guys would be, I don't know. We'll see. There's a lot to consider with that scene, and it's very, very cool. And then we go on to the next part, and this is where we get the red mask dude with the crimson thing, this crimson scale mask. And this is following the Edur conquest. So there's been a lot of kind of mayhem and things going on. He is not a fan of the Lethery. He has these two companions, which I think are Kachain Shamal because of the talons, and they're just two of these are strong enough to destroy an army. We've seen that. And he's saying it's probably good that the Lethery have gone home, because my two buddies would just tear right through them. And I wonder, how is he controlling these guys? Anyway, we get to a place where there are maybe gray swords, and they have been destroyed by wolves. I think I'm reading that right, and maybe left there frozen. Now, it says that their skin was black. I think that at first I went down a rabbit hole that these are Tistan D, because this is kind of the location, I think, of where a lot of those initial battles happened, right? Where Gothos did his thing, and people would have fallen here and are trapped in the ice, kind of in that north section of the map. So I'm a little confused, but it sounds like maybe these are more people who have gotten frostbite, and that's why their skin is black like this. But it's interesting in, again, connecting the two halves of the prologue. In the first part, we have this ice being cast down on everything, freezing everything. And now we have note that the ice is melting. So what's going to happen when that happens? And also what happens when the Omtos Falak gets torn asunder or whatever, if that would happen. It seems like Gothos is expecting that to happen. But I might be talking from my rear end. Anyway, he sees the two companions coming. He hears them coming. And let's see. He has vengeance on his mind, even though his two companions just are indifferent, which makes me again think of the House of Chains, how people like Polale just spread disease, indifferent of who it catches. Burn, just kind of indifferent. The people that are in the House of Chains, he just wants people who do their thing. It sounds like Calor, like Karsa in a way. He just is kind of a nuke waiting to happen. I think of Icarium at the end of, I think at the end of Bone Hunters, he got put into one of these houses. He was, I think, this life stealer that was in the game that Fiddler was playing. Man, I need to go back to those two chapters. I know I kind of ranted because I was expecting us to get to some other conclusions. I thought that we would get a convergence with some Skykeeps and things as well. But man, that game that Fiddler played, it's just very interesting to have that convergence that happened there and this one here. And now we have this ice melting, and I wonder what is going to rise out of the ice. If there is going to be something to rise out of the ice. Okay. And we get these people, this other foreign group that he knows is not, these are not Lethery. So we have maybe the Barghast who have shown up. I don't think this this group with the Grey Swords or whoever these guys are, I don't think that's the same group from scene 4, but it could be. It sounds like maybe just two different groups of people that have shown up, but I'm not sure. Anyway, foreigners here in the land of his heart. And that's very, very interesting. As a couple things. Earlier on, well, let's do the more obvious one. We see in this last page that these people have been ravaged by wolves, and they've had their hearts like targeted. They've been torn out, and their hearts have been targeted out, and they've been. It's just not really the way that wolves usually do this sort of thing. And I think of, it's just hearts. Nothing else, just the hearts. And it's very confusing there. But also I think of in the first scene where there's notice made of the land kind of torn open, and as if like a talon opened it up. And then within it, there's this poisonous rend or whatever. And it just makes me think of that a little bit, how some of these things sort of echo. Now, we have this new defender on this place, which is the land of his heart, which means it sounds like he's been there for a long time, or she. I don't know who, if gender's implied here. But we don't know who this is. And it sounds like they've been there for a long time. And we saw what Kilmandaros and Animander Rake did to defend, or at least it seems implied with that cleansing. And it sounds like here we go again, potentially. And makes me wonder. It makes me wonder what's going to happen. It sounds like there's going to be a lot of awful things happening in this one. We had those hints in Memories of Ice. We've seen how the Talani Mass just chased after the Jagged. We saw what the Jagged have done to others. We've seen this sense of almost ethnic cleansing. It sounds like Animander Rake might have been a part of that a little bit. But now I feel after doing that enough, maybe it has really changed him after all this time. And yeah, it makes you think of Andarist being there defending the on the Drift of Valley or whatever. Man, they've been doing that for a long, long time. And where is Kilmandaros now? Is she in an acorn somewhere? Anyway, just an amazing, amazing prologue that I have been considering and thinking about, reading and rereading, talking on the Discord for the last 4 or 5 days. Finally, I think I can leave it behind and read the first flippin' scene of chapter 1. I have read the first epilogue, though, or the epigraph of, yeah. No, I've read the epigraph of chapter 1, not of subbook 1, and it is incredible. But I'll leave that for the next one. And I'll talk to you on the next one. It's not going to be this long for all of these, guys. I mean, it might if it continues being incredible. But that prologue, like the other prologues, just set the stage so well. So well. And probably the next 2 chapters, if it's the same as the other ones, will demand some kind of deep dive as well. Because they just, Steven Erikson is very careful with his words. And I just think the thing he's setting up is so amazing. And if you can really go into this, if you go into these books, and this would be advice, I mean, if you've made it this far, obviously you like Malazan. But I should do some kind of other video and say, really pay attention to the prologues of these books and pay attention to the first chapter. I mean, it's a little redundant to say or obvious to say, but I think Steven Erikson is very careful with his wording and the theming of his prologues. And if you can kind of get the type of things that are being conveyed in those prologues, I think it'll help for the rest of the way. I know people who skip prologues altogether because they figure if it's not in chapters 1 to the end, why would I care? It doesn't matter. It's just filler stuff for tone and things like that. And yes, that is true sometimes. But could you imagine skipping the prologues in Malazan Book of the Fallen? You would miss some of the most key things in this series. And I think you just need to, really chew your food when it comes to the prologues. And that's why I decided to stay a few days and really go over it a few times and discuss it with people on the Discord. If you don't, I have a link to the Discord in the description here. And yeah, anyway, I hope this was interesting to you. I know it was a little bit long-winded, but I really wanted to capture everything that I could because it's just one of those great prologues. And I'll talk to you on the next one where we finally get to chapter 1. And I'll talk to you later.